Have you ever met someone who stayed on your mind, even though you barely spoke? Maybe it was a look, a moment, a gesture. But sometimes it's just a single word. A simple word, spoken at the right time, can cut through the noise, bypass logic and reach a place deep within, the unconscious. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Words can work the same way. Planted in the fertile soil of the sai, unconscious, they grow silently until they become presence. This video isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding the human soul. And if you learn how to speak 3 specific words with truth and awareness, you won't just make someone think about you. You'll awaken something already inside them, waiting to be touched. Prepare to see language in a whole new way. Picture this. You meet someone. The conversation is brief, and yet days later you still remember what they said, even if you don't know why. Why does that happen? Because they touched something that lives beyond logic. They reached the unconscious, that vast inner world where everything true, ancient, and essential resides. Carl Jung dedicated his life to understanding how words, symbols, and images stir the psyche. He taught that the personal unconscious is always in dialogue with the collective unconscious, and some words, when spoken with emotional truth, act like keys. You might forget someone's name, but never how they made you feel. That's where it all begins. Words spoken with presence awaken emotion. Emotion creates connection, and connection leaves a mark. The unconscious never forgets who touched it. What comes next are 3 words that carry profound power, but they only work when spoken from a place of genuine presence. Without that, they're just noise. But so these words stay, and they make someone think of you without even knowing why. Carl Jung didn't see words as just tools for communication. He saw them as symbols, carriers of meaning far deeper than we realize. To Jung, a word was never just a word. It was a doorway. When we speak, we're not only expressing thoughts, we're revealing unconscious material. We're activating emotional memories, personal complexes, and even ancient archetypes, all with a single phrase. He believed that certain words can evoke not just ideas, but entire emotional landscapes. Think about how the word home feels different from house, how I see you carries a completely different weight than I understand. It's not about semantics, it's about soul resonance. In Jung's view, what gives a word its true power is not its dictionary meaning, but the emotional charge it carries for the person hearing it. And most of that charge lives in the unconscious. This is why some people can say something simple, and it lingers for days, because the words touch something old, something sacred, something forgotten. When spoken with awareness, words can heal, but they can also haunt. They can unlock what someone has kept buried for years, and once that door opens, they feel drawn back to you without knowing why. And now, let's go deeper. Into the first word. It's not dramatic. It's not poetic, but it's one of the most emotionally magnetic words in the human language. It sounds simple, but when spoken with depth, I understand becomes a healing force. Most people go through life feeling unseen, unheard, and deeply misunderstood. They may not show it, but the longing to be understood is one of the deepest emotional needs we carry. Carl Jung often explored the pain of disconnection, not just from others, but from ourselves. He believed that healing begins the moment we feel recognized, not judged, not fixed, but truly understood. That's why this word carries such weight. Not, I agree, not, I've been through the same thing. Just, I understand. When you say it and you mean it, you're telling the other person, you are not alone in this. It creates a space of safety. And when someone feels safe, they lower their defenses, even if just a little. In that moment, something shifts. Their unconscious registers. This person sees me. This person feels me. This person gets it. And whether they realize it or not, a bond is formed, not through logic, but through resonance. This is not about saying the right thing. It's about being fully present and letting your words carry that presence. When I understand is spoken with authenticity, it bypasses the ego and reaches something deeper, the inner child, the forgotten self, the aching soul. And once someone feels truly understood, they won't forget it. They may not know why, but you'll linger in their thoughts. Not because you impressed them, but because you touched something real. Few words awaken as much longing, conflict, and emotion as the word free. Why? Because deep down we all crave it, even if we're afraid of what it might mean. Carl Jung often spoke of the tension between what we are and what we were taught to be, between our true self and our adapted self. And nothing exposes this inner conflict more than the idea of freedom. The word free doesn't just speak to liberty, it speaks to possibility, to a version of ourselves we may have buried long ago. When you use this word, even in a gentle, passing way, you're activating a powerful symbol in the unconscious. You are allowed to choose. You don't have to carry what doesn't belong to you anymore. You can be free. Imagine someone saying to you, "You deserve to feel free in this," or "You're free to decide what's right for you." That doesn't just land in the mind. It stirs something old and sacred, a desire for self-expression, for release, for authenticity. The truth is, many people live in silent prisons of expectations, of fear, of guilt, of roles they never chose. The word free, when said with love, reminds them that there's another way and that you see it in them. That's why it lingers. That's why it returns in their thoughts again and again, because free doesn't just describe a state, it offers hope. And when you become associated with that hope, even unconsciously, the person will feel drawn to you. Not because you saved them, but because you reminded them of something they deeply want but had forgotten was possible, and that kind of connection doesn't fade easily. There's a quiet kind of power in the word choice. It doesn't shout, it doesn't beg for attention, but when spoken with intention, it can awaken something buried in the soul: agency. Carl Jung believed that the path to individuation, the journey toward becoming your true self, only begins when a person realizes they have a choice, not just between right and wrong, but between staying asleep and waking up. The word choice carries a sacred weight because it acknowledges something most people secretly long for: to no longer feel like victims of life. So many of us walk around feeling trapped by circumstance, by habit, by roles we never truly chose. When someone gently says you have a choice, it stirs a deep internal shift, not always comfortable, but powerful, because choice calls forth the adult in us, the conscious self, the one who can stand at the crossroads and say, "I decide." Now imagine saying to someone, "You don't have to do it the way it's always been done, you have a choice." That sentence might be the first time their unconscious hears, "You're not stuck," and that moment of realization, it doesn't just spark thought, it sparks desire. Desire to move, to change, to explore who they really are. And because that moment came through you, your voice, your presence, your energy, you become part of the memory of that awakening. Not because you told them what to do, but because you reminded them that they could choose, and that's unforgettable. Sometimes we think people remember us for what we did, for the stories we told, for how we looked, but more often they remember how they felt when they were with us. And that feeling doesn't live in logic. It lives in the unconscious. When you say words like "I understand," "free," or "choice" with real presence, you're not just having a conversation, you're planting seeds, seeds that bypass the surface, seeds that fall into the soil of their inner world, where old wounds sleep, where longings hide, where unlived dreams wait. At first they might not even notice, they might go home and carry on with life. But later, in a quiet moment, in the stillness before sleep or while staring out a window, you return not because of something you did, but because of something you awakened. That's the secret. Words like these speak not to the mind but to the soul behind the defenses. And when the soul hears truth, even gently, it listens, it remembers, it replays. This is why someone might think of you days later with no clear reason, why your voice might echo in their silence, why something you said keeps pulling at them, even if they don't understand why. It's not magic, it's resonance. You spoke to the part of them that wants to feel seen, free, capable of choosing a different life. And because most people rarely, if ever, hear these words spoken with love and sincerity, you stand out, not loudly, but deeply. There's a fine line between using words to connect and using them to control. Carl Jung warned about the danger of projecting our unconscious onto others, of speaking not from presence, but from shadow, from ego, from the desire to be wanted, admired, or remembered. So let's be clear, this is not about cleverness, not about saying the right thing to leave an impression. It's about becoming someone who speaks from a place of inner truth. When you say, "I understand," do you mean it? Have you slowed down enough to actually feel what the other is feeling? When you say free, do you carry that energy in yourself? Or are you just offering what you secretly wish someone would give you? When you say choice, are you honoring the other person's path or subtly pushing your own? These questions matter because words that don't come from presence don't penetrate. People may smile, nod, even thank you, but they won't feel you. Jung believed that transformation only happens in relationship, but not just any relationship. One where authenticity lives. So before speaking these words, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, am I truly here right now, or just trying to be remembered? The paradox is this: when you stop trying to leave a mark, you do. Because when someone feels your presence, they feel safe. When they feel safe, they open. And when they open, your words don't just echo. They take root. Speak less, but with more soul. Let silence carry your sincerity. Let your energy say what words can't, and when you finally do speak, let it be like offering water to someone who didn't even know they were thirsty. There's a mystery in the way certain people stay with us, not in the mind, but in the body, in the heart, in the quiet. They cross our thoughts at odd hours. We remember their voice, their presence, a phrase they said, without knowing why. It still echoes. That's not coincidence, it's resonance. Carl Jung believed that when we encounter someone who awakens something in us, it's not just about the other person, it's about what they mirrored back. A forgotten part of ourselves, a hidden longing, an unopened door. When you speak words that touch someone's unconscious, truly touch, you become part of that mirror, not because you gave advice, not because you impressed them, but because in your presence they felt something real rise to the surface. Maybe they felt seen for the first time. Maybe they felt the possibility of change. Maybe they glimpsed who they could be, if they let go of everything they're not. And so they think of you, not as someone who filled their mind, but as someone who stirred their soul. They remember the calm in your voice, the way you didn't rush, the word you offered that lingered like a gentle fingerprint on their spirit. This is how you become unforgettable, not through effort, but through presence. Because in a world full of noise, the person who speaks with soul stays. In the end, it's not about being remembered for your words. It's about being remembered for your presence. When you speak the words, "I understand," "free," and "choice," not as tactics, but as truths, you are doing something quietly radical. You're holding space. You're offering safety. You're becoming a mirror for someone's deeper self. And that's what truly lingers. People don't stay up at night thinking about who was smartest in the room. They remember who made them feel something that mattered, who made them pause, who awakened something they didn't even know was asleep. So, how do you live this? Here are 3 gentle practices. Speak slowly. When your words come from stillness, they carry more weight. Be with people, not above them. Drop the need to fix or impress. Let your presence do the work. Only say what you mean. If it's not rooted in truth, let it be silence instead. Carl Jung taught that real transformation happens through relationship, but only the kind rooted in sincerity. So, if you want someone to think of you long after you're gone, don't try to be unforgettable. Just be real, be awake, be present, and trust that the soul recognizes what the mind cannot explain, because in the end, it's not about the words themselves. It's about the space they open, and the person who opens that space is never truly forgotten. Thank you for watching. If this message spoke to something inside you, and even in a quiet way, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and stay close. Now, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which of the 3 words touched you the most? Understand, free, or choice? What did it awaken in you? And have you ever experienced a moment when just a few words stayed with you for days or even years. Share your story. It might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Let's build a space where real conversations can happen, not about trends, but about truth. See you in the next video.